Now, with me in the studio this week to discuss more about this menace is Amadin, a senior security correspondent, and Jerry Ajogwu, another security correspondent. You're both welcome to Inside Story.
Thank you, Lilian.
It's nice having you. Okay, now before we get to cybercrime, like I said, that is going to be our major talk for today. Now let's just divert a bit to Amnesty International. Now, there was a new report by Amnesty International that on alleged sexual abuses by troops and the JTF, government-backed militias in northeast Nigeria. Now, before we get to that, let me throw a little light on it to my audience. Amnesty International, commonly known as Amnesty or AI, is a London-based non-governmental organization focused on human rights. Now, this organization claims to have over 7 million members and supporters around the world. The stated objective of the organization is to conduct research, generate actions to prevent and end abuses of human rights, and to demand justice for those whose rights have been violated. Now, Amnesty International has accused the Nigerian security forces of raping thousands of women and girls who escaped from the brutal rule of Boko Haram insurgents and killing many people who refused to be moved from territories rescued from the insurgents. Now, one may wonder, why would such reports come out? Because these are people who are meant to protect the vulnerables, and now they are the ones raping them and treating them bad. But now, we need to confirm now. Now, what are you guys, starting with you, Amadin, what's your thought on this report?
Now, the issue concerning Amnesty International is a very, very complex issue. Why I say it's a very, very complex issue is that Amnesty International is not just a tabletop organization that brings a report, whether true or false, and you throw into the dustbin. Now, let's go back down to memory lane. Remember at the height of the Boko Haram insurgency, when Amnesty International brought one of its first reports talking about human rights abuses, troops violating the rights of persons in the Northeast. Nigerians didn't take it seriously. Our usual attitude, we just said, oh, it's Amnesty International talking. But there was a backlash, there was a counter-reaction. But because of that report, the United States government invoked the Leahy Law. You would have heard people talk about the United States not selling weapons to Nigeria, saying Barack Obama did not sell weapons to Nigeria, tried to frustrate the campaign against Boko Haram in the Northeast, but they were getting it wrong. It was because of this kind of reports which Amnesty International brought up that the United States invoked the Leahy Law. Now, what is the Leahy Law? What the Leahy Law does is that it looks at countries that receive funding and assistance from the U.S. government. If those countries have reneged on international conventions, international obligations that has to do with human rights and the rest, they cut off such funding. And it doesn't just end there. The U.S. is a global power. Once the U.S. say that we're not going to fund these people, we're not going to work with these people, all their allies around the world, they do the same. You heard recently the sale of the Super Tucano jets. What happened? The U.S. does not manufacture Super Tucano jets, but there had to be a U.S. approval because the allies manufactured the jets. Now, when the Leahy Law was invoked, that was the peak of the Boko Haram crisis. Nigeria had to resort in trying to shop for weapons at the black market. We can remember the infamous South Africa money gate issue where money was seized by South African authorities. That was where it got to. It did not just end there. The U.S. stopped its collaboration. Most senior military personnel, their visas were revoked. That was when the Nigerian military saw that we cannot keep on taking Amnesty International's report lightly. So from then till now, what has happened? I would tell you, someone who follows the military from a very, very close distance, I work with them, I'll say the military has done a lot to ensure that human rights improve. Currently in the Nigerian military, there is human rights desk. The military has engaged in a lot of civil-military interactions to restore confidence. But is this enough? Just yesterday or day before yesterday, the military issued a press statement saying Amnesty was going to come up with a dam. So right now it's as if there is a train of brickbat between the Nigerian military and Amnesty, which is not good for us.
Yeah, so we'll get to that now. Jerry, what do you have to add to what he's just said?
I think concerning the issue of Amnesty International, just like the Director, Defense Information, Brigadier General John Ajim said yesterday,
Yeah.
it's becoming a habitual, a kind of ritual, normal thing for them to come up with, I call it fallacious reports concerning the military.
Okay.
We are yet to know the major aim, the interest. We don't know the interest of Amnesty International concerning the activities of the military. But if you look at it, you understand that it's a kind of, they are trying to sabotage the efforts of the Nigerian military. Be that as it may, we are supposed to ask ourselves questions. Why must it be Amnesty International? Always, Amnesty will come up with kind of reports concerning the Nigerian military, and there has never been a compendium or a kind of a presentation. These are our findings, no investigation. They'll just come up with a kind of, these are reports without any investigation to ascertain if it is true. And want to know what is their kind of, what's the source of their information, how they get to know. There's nothing like that. They come up maybe to becloud the gullible, but most of their reports is not true concerning the military.
Okay, now let's, before we get back to the military, Jerry. Now these people, from what I read earlier, it showed, from what I read, they claim they have done an investigation. They have concluded a report on it, and they have come to a conclusion that women are being raped and abused for food. Now, why would you think such an international organization will always come up with these things if they don't have enough proof to show for it?
Fine. Let's ask ourselves these basic questions. Did Amnesty International go to the IDP camps? If yes, when, how?
Okay.
There is no evidence. They didn't go there. They'll just sit back and come up with reports. What we want to know is this. We are not trying to debunk outrightly their claims, but where are your verification and how did you get to know? If you can't provide the verification, then it's false. You didn't go to the IDP camps. There's no link between there's no nexus between your story and what you claim is happening in the camp. So, on the personal side and from my own view, I think there's a kind of interest. They have a kind of interest concerning the activities of the Nigerian military, and I see it as sabotage because our military are doing their best in the northeast. And you Nigerians can attest to it that it has not. The story is no longer the same. The incessant bomb blasts and all the terrorist activities has been reduced. If you go to the northeast, even Maiduguri, for instance, you see that business activities and everything is back to normal as it was before.
Okay.
For me, I would like to say that if we stay on this narrative that Amnesty is false and they have an interest, their report is fallacious, I think that narrative is totally wrong. Let me tell you why I would say it's totally wrong. Amnesty has their modus operandi. They have the way they conduct their investigation. And for me, I think that there's a bit of arrogance attached to this from the position of the military. Because if Amnesty, they come with this report, if I was in the military, the first thing I would do is I would study the modality by which Amnesty comes out with the kind of reports because the truth about the matter is that everything is perception. We are not talking about the performance of the military here, the performance of the military in the war against insurgency. We are talking about human rights abuses. Now, everything is perception. If the military does not abuse human rights, but the people around the areas where the military work, they believe that the military abuses human rights, they have a wrong perception. And when you have organizations like, they have a wrong perception. When you have organizations like Amnesty go to the field and interview these people, their report will be that the military is engaged in this kind of acts. That's why I say is a kind of arrogance that I think it will not help the military. What I think the military should do, because if you ask me on a personal note, I don't think the Nigerian military will sexually abuse the rights of persons in areas. But whether you like it or not, Amnesty has built a reputation worldwide. You cannot just with one press statement discard Amnesty's reputation. Amnesty has built a reputation and they have come up with a report. Yes, the military has put in so much effort to improve on human rights at its areas of operations. Remember just recently, the former chief of army staff came out to say that the military are colluding with armed militia to attack village. And what did the military do? The military began to investigate. And if you read the military report, it came out last week. If you read their report in detail, you will see that why the former chief of army staff, T.Y. Daniel, made that allegation is not far-fetched. So from my own point, that's why I was getting to in my first conversation, this throwing of brickbat between the military and Amnesty will not help. What the military are meant to do is this. They are performing so well in the northeast. They've reclaimed most of the territories, or if not all the territories, by Boko Haram. The insurgents and the terrorists are on the run. But now you have an issue where an international organization of repute is saying that you have your boys have abused the rights of men. At this point, I don't think coming out to say that Amnesty is false, they have an interest, they want to sabotage Nigeria is the best way. What I think the military needs to do is that call Amnesty and say, okay, we are happy you're a watchdog. Tell us how you went about getting details of your report, and then let us work with you to reach the field, and any Nigerian soldier responsible will be brought to book. Then Amnesty will have that perception that the military is interested in addressing these issues. But when you come up, put a defensive posture and say everything that Amnesty has brought up is false because they want to sabotage our efforts,
Okay.
actually it's not going to help Nigeria.
All right, I
I think I would like to step in. Concerning kind of having a rapport with the Amnesty International, I think if you go through their reports, from the reports that was released last week concerning colluding, the alleged colluding by the former chief of army staff, T.Y. Danjuma, if you look at the report, you understand that on several accounts, and there were several times they invited the Amnesty International, the Nigerian military invited them and said, come, let's have a kind of rapport. You let us know how did you come about your investigations, and they turned it down. There was never a time they honored the military invitation. All they do is to go and they come to the public and present what is not true without any verification. There is no kind of let's meet the military and let's hear from their own side of the story. No, when they get this information from their own independent investigation, which is supposed to be so, because they are not supposed to meet the military even before they go for investigation. But after everything, you are supposed to hear from both sides. You can't just say you've presented a report and there is no background to the report. The military may not be aware. The only time the military will be aware of Amnesty International's report is when it's on air.
Okay. Now, back to you, Jerry. I'll be back to you now. Do you think there can ever be a common ground between the Nigerian Army and Amnesty International?
What's the common ground? The only common ground we are trying to say here is let the source of their information be justified.
Okay.
You don't come to the public to be cloud. I call it to be cloudy gullible. People will just accept what you tell them. No, it's not done. Let there be a synergy. A kind of close investigation, and the verification should be, let there be a format. You don't just come to the public and you say things because you claim you are an international organization of repute. No, the Nigerian military is also of repute because they have contributed their best quota.
Okay, so how about you? Do you think there will ever be a common ground between both parties?
I'll just like to reemphasize what I said.
Okay.
Amnesty International, Nigeria, it does not present only reports in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Now, there's a way Amnesty International goes out to do its research and get its feedback from the public. And most of these people are in areas where the military has operations. Now, I stated very clearly that everything is about perception. Maybe the people Amnesty International spoke to are people who honestly believe, though it is false, that military men or military personnel were involved in sexual abuse
Harassment.
of internally displaced persons. Now, what should the report now tell the military to do? The report should tell the military to improve on its civil-military relations and work to change the perception of these people in these areas, that the Nigerian military does not in any way involve in this kind of acts. I can tell you, I've worked with the military closely. I can tell you that if you take a case of sexual abuse to the military's human rights desk, the perpetrators will not be left off the hook. But it will not be enough for the military to just get up and say these reports are false, we'll discard it, because they might discard it, but we're in a global village. The international community will not discard it.
All right, thank you. Now, I believe on my part, I feel like the military should, these people have come up with these reports. The military should make their own investigations and see if this is true or not just discard it totally. No doubt Amnesty International has come out to say this, but I feel the military should actually look into it, investigate it, and if it's wrong, they can now come out and give a proper report and say it's wrong. If it's right, then they can also work on it quietly and control what's happening. Well, that's our thoughts on the Amnesty International. We're going to be going on a really quick break, and when we return, we'll go to our discourse.